This is a special report.
Welcome to CBS News New York. I'm Dana Tyler. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down President Joe Biden's $400 billion plan to cancel or reduce federal student loan debt for millions of Americans. We're going to take the next 10 minutes to break this down to understand it better, this decision, and what it means for those people who have federal student loans. Starting with how we got here. The Department of Education argued the plan was justified because of a 2003 law called the HEROES Act, which authorizes the Education Secretary to waive or modify financial assistance in connection with a national emergency, in this case, because of the pandemic. 6 Republican-led states, however, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Missouri, and South Carolina, sued, arguing President Biden's debt relief plan exceeded the administration's authority. And now the Supreme Court agrees. The decision was 6-3 by the court's conservative majority. Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson gave the dissenting opinions. Wrote the opinion saying the precedent, quote, requires that Congress speak clearly before a department secretary can unilaterally alter large sections of the American economy. Justice Elena Kagan wrote the dissenting opinion, saying in part, from the first page to the last, today's opinion departs from the demands of judicial restraint. Okay, so the debt forgiveness plan was a major 2020 campaign pledge from President Biden, who said he would forgive at least $10,000 per borrower. Going forward, the Biden administration will likely have to either push a law through Congress or attempt another executive order. We're still waiting to hear what happens, as we are expecting the president to address the ruling sometime soon. However, a statement from the White House earlier today says in part the president will make it clear he's not done fighting yet and will announce new actions to protect student loan borrowers. This ruling impacts an estimated 43 million borrowers. That's about 1 in 8 Americans, many of whom have not had to make a student loan payment in nearly 3 years. All right, a lot going on. With us to explain the effect of this high court ruling, we have J.C. Polanco, an attorney and a higher education advocate. He is the president and CEO of the Council on Legal Education Opportunity and serves on the faculty at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. J.C., thank you for being here. I'm surprised with all, how big is the business card, right? You do a lot of different things. Probably don't
I'm here in my capacity as an attorney, as well as a higher education advocate with you today, Dana. So happy to be here with you.
We are so grateful. Tell us first your reaction to this ruling by the Supreme Court.
You know, considering how some of this decisions coming out of the Supreme Court tend to lean on ideological grounds, I'm not too surprised at the decision today. I am surprised at how surprised people are. There are millions of Americans that were depending on the student loan forgiveness across the country. Yeah, we're looking at a $430 billion forgiveness, but we're looking at 43 million folks that were depending on this for their daily budgets, for determining their lifestyle and determining where they will live, determining how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to pay their bills. And there was some relief that they were expecting, that they were really relying on. And quite frankly, the president promised in his campaign that he would get it done, and it didn't happen. So you have a lot of disappointment, not only around the country, but I'm sure in the White House today, Dana.
Hopelessness for those people, you know, who owe all of that money. What do they do next? And especially the group most affected, Black women. Is that correct? Your understanding the amount of money owed in this debt, in these loans, compared to other, specifically white student loan carriers. Talk about that a little bit.
Dana, you know, the majority of student loan borrowers are Black and Latino, and a lot of us that borrow these loans, I know when I went to law school and then to business school, I ended up borrowing over $200,000, and I was chasing the American dream. Many kids where I'm coming from here in the Bronx decided to pursue their American dream, and they knew that education and getting a quality education was the key to success. Mm-hmm. So many of us followed that dream right to the student loan office, right to that financial aid office, and we signed. And many of us went out there and got our degrees. A lot of the folks that I grew up with came right back to where we grew up, and they became teachers. They are working in not-for-profits, are giving back to their community. A lot of the people that you're relying on, a lot of Black women that I went to college with also came back to the community and took those jobs that don't pay a lot, but they serve the community and they inspire people. And unfortunately, they find themselves in a situation where those student loans outpace inflation. You know, Dana, the truth is that in the last 30 years, tuition has increased by 180%.
Wow.
We're seeing incredible tuition rates. And it's just unfair to think that we're looking at people that we promised them an opportunity. We promised American Dream if they take the risk. And now when they go out there to get those jobs don't pay enough. That we find that the rent is just too high. We find that people are depending on whether or not they're going to pay a co-pay for their health insurance or pay their student loans. And a lot of these folks are suffering a great deal, and they're going to suffer more once October 1st comes around.
Because that's the date when the loans start up again, paying the loan.
That's right, Dana. We have to keep in mind that, you know, there is an incredible generational divide in this debate, and I see it every day. I know folks from my generation, Generation X, and those baby boomers are saying, when I went to college, Dana, they say, I paid that student loan back.
That's right, I did.
That's true, and I'm still paying it back, and I think I'm going to be paid back till I'm 71, Dana, so I'm with your kids on this one. And I got to tell you, life today is very different from back in the day. I teach at a community college at CUNY where tuition was once a zero. Now students are paying, working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet and to make those tuition payments. And considering the incredible increase of tuition today, 180% in the last 30 years, I'm asking us folks in my generation and a little older to step back and think about what we're saying. Tuition is incredible today. You see tuitions in the $70,000 a year range, and even at the state schools, it's still very expensive.
Right.
And those salaries coming out of college, they're not increasing by 180%.
JC,
so this is a very tough position, Dana.
What do you say, though, to the people who say, wait a second, the federal government should not be paying these loans. This is going to cost everybody else money. This isn't right. This is not something the executive branch can decide. What do you say to that?
Well, that's the position of many folks that we speak with, and I think around the country, polls are showing that there's a real serious divide, and I think there's a fair argument. And the argument they make is, hey, you took the risk, I decided not to. Why should I pay yours? When you view it as a zero-sum game, that's one of those difficult debates until you realize that the reason why we end up taking these debts, the reason why so many young people are out there in debt beyond belief, you can't even imagine how high debt they're in, is because we really promised them. I know as a social studies teacher, I promised them. I said, you can achieve the American dream and education is the key to success. They go on and they do their part. And it turns out that those jobs are not available. And it turns out that the salaries are not going to be able to pay those tuitions back. And it turns out that quite frankly, we just experienced an incredible pandemic that really made jobs disappear across the world and here in our city alone. So we're lying to ourselves and not living in reality if we don't realize that this was a team effort and that many of us took those risks on. And yes, it's true, we should be responsible for our debt, but hold up, we're not asking for a complete amnesty here. The president is asking for a small portion of that to be alleviated. And I think that's fair, Dana, for us to at least examine why can we do that. Now, the interesting thing, Dana, here is this. What does the president do next?
Well, just a second here. That's what I was about to ask you. We're wearing your political hat here because this was a campaign promise, all right? He's still in office. We know we have people running for his seat in 2024, including Mr. Biden. So politically talk about this, and then we'll get to the voters and what voters after a primary with such low turnout.
Right. You know, interesting, Dana, as someone who's discussed policy before here at CBS, I have to share with you that this was a promise and it energized a lot of young people to come out to the polls to support the president's agenda. I think that depending on how the president reestablishes this position, one of the things I hope that President Biden learned from the previous administration was how you could go back to the Supreme Court by changing your methodology. Here, the president has an opportunity to go back and change the manner in which the pause on student loans or even the amnesty on student loans were done so that perhaps it can pass this time around at the Supreme Court level. You know, I keep hearing, well, the president has other options. Of course, you know, we heard him speak earlier, gave a statement earlier today, and, you know, he will be speaking, of course, to the nation. What tools do you suspect that the executive branch has? What could he do? Well, to be honest, the president can extend the pause for a little longer. I don't think that right now, considering the decision, he has a right to completely eliminate it. But considering where folks are economically, there may be an extended pause. I know him and his attorneys are going to think about how can we go back to the Supreme Court on this issue and cross that Rubicon and perhaps get 2 more votes on our side on this issue to alleviate some of the debt Americans are facing.
J.C. Polanco, attorney, higher education advocate. We thank you for what you do every day, but also for being our guest right now on CBS News New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome. Before we go, let's get to some of the important dates you need to know. JC mentioned October 1st. Federal student loan repayments have been on pause because of the pandemic, but those payments will resume this fall. They'll start accruing interest again on September 1st. Payments will restart in October. To check the status of your federal loans or make changes to your repayment plan, visit studentaid.gov. We understand there is a lot to figure out. We have put an article on our website, cbsnewyork.com, detailing the important dates and all of the information. Again, the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan. We will bring you the president's remarks in full later in the hour. And we'll have more coverage tonight on CBS 2 News at 5 and 6. I'm Dana Tyler. See you at 5.
This has been a special report.